everyone, welcome to On the Other Hand. I'm Ariane Zurcher, and today I'm going to be showing you how I wrap those skeins of thread onto little bobbins. And depending on the skein, I might do it in different ways, but mostly I have sort of a general way that I wrap these things so that it just doesn't become a tangled nest. This video is really in response to someone who asked for the video, and so I promised her that I would try to get to it before I left on a little trip I'm taking. For those of you who saw my video that I posted yesterday, and I talk about how my husband before a big trip tends to, have some big thing that he's decided he has to do, like get a new iPhone or whatever, right? And I was kind of joking, but also thinking that we were out of the woods because, we are leaving tomorrow early. So I just have to tell all of you this. So today, I hear this horrible yelling. I go running into the other room. What's the matter? He says, I just spilled my iced tea all over my computer. I'm not kidding. And I thought, I just did a video about him doing this sort of thing. And here we are, I almost felt like I had jinxed it, that if I hadn't done the video, maybe that by saying it to all of you, that somehow this made it all happen. And then I thought, that's ridiculous. This happens every time we leave on a trip. He'll never see this video, so I feel like it's safe. And none of you are going to tell him. But oh my gosh, are you kidding me? He spilled his iced tea. So you know where he is right now? He's at the Apple store. My son said, just get a bunch of rice and stick it in some rice. Yeah. So I also wanted to just say, to preface this video, before I start showing you how I wrap my threads, I thought it required a little warning because, there are lots of gadgets out there to wind your threads, right? There are lots of them. And I do show one of them and talk about another one that I have somewhere but can't find, which tells you how often I use it. But I thought I should mention that, I do a very, I'm trying to find the word. This is not a professional looking way that I wrap my threads. I just have to say it. You'll see what I do. And maybe you'll laugh because it's kind of funny. But there's nothing fancy here going on with the wrapping of threads. Just thought I'd put it out there just as a little warning for those of you. And I do have on a skirt when I'm showing you. It's not risque or anything, but I have to have a skirt that, it's either that or some sort of leggings. Well, you'll see. We'll get to it. Okay. I just also, I need to say this. So after I posted yesterday's video, it all becomes a blur. We're hitting such massive, there's so many white spots now in my brain that I think we've just, it's like when it's all, there's so many that you just basically are in a cloud. That's pretty much where I am right now. I think I've just hit a mass of white spots. They've all sort of gathered together and we're just basically, it's just a big blob. I shouldn't joke about it, but what else are you going to do? So I have to tell you, after yesterday's video posted, and I had mentioned this whole thing about traveling and, the anxiety. So buckle your seatbelts because I get up and the video posts, and suddenly I'm getting all these emails from people trying to go onto the website to sign up for the various workshops, and they're getting thrown back to the homepage. My coder, my computer guru, who I totally rely on, I mean, I talk to her more than I talk to pretty much anybody. We have an understanding that, she's traveling on vacation. She's on like a little vacation, right? So I really don't want to be bothering her. However, this now has fallen into emergency in all caps, right? I mean, and I'm thinking, I have to pack. My husband's now yelling about this computer. This is all happening at the same time. Iced tea is getting spilled on his computer. He decides that he has a pair of shoes and they require some very intricate lace thing with little plastic things that you pull and burning the ends of the laces. Anyway, I was able to solve all of this. I said to him at the time, if only I had knowledge of electrical issues, plumbing issues, that would be great. And then he suggested that I go to a technical school for all of that. Because, at the age of almost 61, I should embark on a whole new career as a plumber, electrician, air conditioning, person. Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm a little handy around the house, but, this is taking it to a whole new level. Anyway, I was able to get his shoes laced, but then he spilled the tea. I can't. That's beyond my abilities to deal with that stuff. Meanwhile, I'm having my own little issues with, people emailing and telling me. I mean, there's nothing more distressing than doing this whole video about sign up for my workshops, and then people are going to sign up and they can't. It's kind of like a nightmare come true. So at one point I just thought, okay, I have to laugh. I mean, you just have to laugh at a certain point. Everything's working now. It's all gotten solved. Everything's working. It's all been sorted out. We're good. And then I realized I'm editing the video on this one on, winding your threads. And I'm thinking, I haven't even done like an intro to this adequately summing up the fact that if you're expecting some fabulous gadget that I'm winding my threads on, you're going to be so disappointed. The good news is that most of you may be able to do what I do, and you won't have to purchase an expensive gadget. That's the good news. The bad news is if you really want the expensive gadget, well, I'm sure someone else is out there who could tell you. It's not me. All right, so let's get to it, because now I've done this elaborate build-up and you're all sort of waiting to see how I wind my threads. Here we go. Just one more thing just one more thing. I swear that's it. And then we're going to go to the organizing and winding. This whole travel thing, it's like we're only gone for just over a week. And it's 3 days prior, I'm starting to feel the anxiety of just getting to the destination. There's something wrong with that calculation, right? I mean, so 3 days prior, lots of anxiety and stress. The day of travel, totally stressful. Everyone's stressed out, like everybody. And then we get there, and then hopefully I'll be able to just sort of sigh and say, okay, this is good. But it would be great if I could do that now. So I'm going to work on that. In the meantime, let's get to winding some thread, because that's kind of mindless. Oh, and the other thing is, I've been putting together my little my little thread thing with my fabric for traveling, I've got to videotape that, because that's a whole nother hornet's nest, really, of what do you bring and how much? Because I want to bring everything. I mean, my clothing is going to be like this much and everything else is going to be like this. And we're spending the whole day out hiking. I'm not going to be bringing stitching with me as we hike. Although you could argue that that's not such a bad idea. I mean, how much food do I really need? I really just need some water, some food to eat, and some stitching for when we, take sit on a rock and look out. A little stitching might be a good idea, don't you think? It doesn't seem unreasonable. Anyway, I'll keep you guys posted. I know you understand. All right, we're going to get to it now. I promise. I thought I'd start with one of these texture selections. People do it in different ways. I know some people separate out each thread and wrap them separately. I don't. I wrap them all together as a hank, and then I just pull a strand from this group. So what I do is I very carefully take this label and I remove it. So I take the label, I remove it, and then I glue it on to my winder. Got my little glue stick here. I do this for all my, whatever winder I'm using, I tend to do this unless I'm using these. If I use these, I use a Sharpie and I just write what it is on the top. Okay, so there's that. Undo this. I'm going to pull this back a little. So what you have is you have your skein, right? And it's all tied in a little knot here. I can try to undo each one of these. It can take hours to, well, not hours, but it can take a while to undo each one. I actually don't find it worth the time and effort. So what I do is I very carefully pull this and I clip it. I make sure that I'm not clipping into the threads themselves, and I just cut those knots off. If I can easily undo one, I will. But if it takes more than a few seconds, it's just not worth the time. Sometimes I have to be careful because I can't really see what I'm doing. Okay, so there's one, and I want to make sure I take the strand, each strand, because there are 5 strands in the texture selection, and I want to make sure that I'm grabbing each one of those strands, and I'll show you why in a second. But first I have to pull all these apart. Everyone's got a different way of doing this. Just because I'm doing it this way doesn't mean this is the only way to do it. You should do it whatever way you like. Sometimes if I can get this undone, I will. Like this one. But typically I don't. Typically I just clip it. Clip the whole thing. Now these texture, the reason I wanted to start with the texture selection, this is a silk texture selection, is that these are by far the hardest to unwrap, only because there's so many of these strands, 5 strands in a batch. Okay, I think I have one more to do. That's the boucle. So I can see that it's right there, and I'm just going to clip that. Okay, so I have my strands, right? And I've got one here, I've got one here, I have this one here, so that's 1, 2, so 4, and I've got one more, which is the spun silk. It's the little tiny one, And I need to find that end. So I've got these 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I wrap it around my knees. Okay. So what I've got here, I've got my knees, and I wrap it around like this, and I take my 5 strands and I pull it a little bit at a time. It can get tangled, so I have to be ready to untangle each one. Sometimes if it's too tangled, I'll go from the other end. So I've got sometimes it's easier to grab a different end and pull on that. But again, as I said, this is by far the hardest one to do. I then take the end like this and I start wrapping it around. And I'm going to wrap it around my cardboard all together. And I sort of pull it like this. It's hard to photograph this and do it at the same time. But what I don't want is to get this whole thing all tangled up. I want it to be, right? So I'm just going to wrap. And I'm going to there, and I've got it. The nice thing about the texture selection is it's not too long. They're actually pretty short sections, and then I just leave it like that. And that's it. So that's my silk texture selection, and that's how I do the silk texture selection as well as the regular selection. All right, this is Oriental linen, and all of the skeins from the thread gatherer come on these little cards. So whether it's silk pearl, or whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. So what I do first is I undo the skein so that I have one big loop, right? So here it is, one big loop. And then I take the part that's knotted here, and because this thread is a little harder to come by, I do spend the time to unknot it because I don't want to lose any part of it. And so I'm going to take it like this and unknot this top. And there it is. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. Here are my knees and my bare feet. And I pull so that my knees are supporting the hank, the skein, right? And I'm going to grab this end. And I keep my knees fairly taut, the thread between them taut. And I'm going to go ahead. And again, peeled the label off. Glued it on here. And now I'm just going to go ahead and pull this as I need to. What I love about these cardboard winders are they're so big. They're so big that I don't have to spend a lot of time winding. I can usually wind these fairly quickly. If you don't have a lot of thread, it's not like it's a big deal to spend the time with some of the smaller ones. But when you have a ton of thread the way I do, I don't have an assistant or an intern who can sit here all day doing this. So I don't want to spend a lot of time. And that's it. And there it is. I do the same with the silk pearl, the Aurora, all of them, the same idea. All right, I have this box, and I just brought it out to show you the different winding things that I've used in the past. These little wooden guys, they're okay. I don't love them. I actually prefer my big cardboard. I prefer these guys. They're just bigger and easier, and these, there's not really a place to easily put a label. And they don't really fit, you know, so they don't fit in here, these little boxes. These boxes are great for these guys. So this is really what I wind on. I wind on these, which you can buy like 100 for, I can't remember, I'll put the link below, or these, which also cheap. You can buy tons of them. As you can see, I've got a lot. I think they come from China. I'll put the link for those below as well. If they say they're out, check back. They'll have them back in. They, you know, periodically they get a run on them and they run out and then they restock. So these boxes right here are just fabulous for these, right? The white. And that's what I put. This is my house of embroidery. This is some leftover silk pearl. Once I go through these, I'm going to rewind them on, probably on these. Eventually I'm going to only use these and the white ones. I'll just use these two, just because they're so cheap and they're so easy to wind. Again, when I am winding on these, I do the exact same thing. There's, you know, I'm not going for, when I was videotaping this, I was thinking, you know, this is, now you know all my secrets. I mean, literally winding with your knees. I don't know. If some people have like, if you've got two whatever poles and you could, I mean, I guess you could rig like a tripod or something, two things that, you know, are this, and then you put the thread around it and then you just pull it off. If that means it's that wooden spinner, you know, the yarn thing, I should find mine. I don't know what I did with it. I mean, it's pretty big. Like, where could I have put it and not see it? Well, if you saw this place, you would actually see that that's entirely possible. But okay, I found it. Here's my thread winder. So the deal with this is, I'm gonna hold that up like that, is you unscrew this top bit, which if you can see here, you unscrew this and this pulls out, right? And then you can kind of screw this down so that it holds it at whatever position you want, and you put your skein around this. Okay, so this is a shepherd's silk. It's Mississippi mud. I'm gonna undo this one and I'll show you. I'll put it around. So again, I'm gonna take this off of its little card. I'm gonna peel this. I'm going to peel this label off, and I'm gonna glue it onto my card. Let's see. So here, I'll glue it on there. If you don't have those glue sticks, I'll put them on a link on for them as well. They're pretty handy, and they've got refills. All right, so there I am, Mississippi mud. It tells me everything I need to know. I'm going to find that part where the skein is put together, you know, tied, and that's where I'm going to undo it. So I've got one big, right, loop. I'm going to go ahead and untie this. There we go. I'm going to put this around I need to pull these guys in, and then I can kind of pull them out. If this gets too tight, it won't turn around, and I need it to, right? All right, so I'm going to take my card here. I'm going to put my end here. And I'm going to start undoing, and as I pull this, it undoes it. And I can go fairly quickly. So this is the other option. As I said, if I had a really big studio and I could just have this thing sitting on a table somewhere, I would totally do that because it really is pretty easy, and it goes really, really fast. So there, however long that took me, and there it is, and I'm done. Okay, I think that pretty much sums up, like I said, I don't, just because this is how I tend to do mine, I would probably use this guy a lot more if I had a bigger studio and I could just have him out. I just resort to my knees because they're there and easy. Don't have to think about it. Don't have to look for them. I know where my knees are. But just because that's how I do it does not mean that that's the only way to do this. I don't, I'm just telling you, I can't tell you how someone else does it. I can only tell you what I do. So I hope this was helpful, and yeah, leave me comments in the comment section to how do you wind your threads? I'm curious to know. And I'll leave links for all those the two winders, the cardboard and the plastic that I like to use. I'll even leave the art bins. People often ask what these are. These are actually refrigerator shelves, and I just buy, they come like 4 to a bunch. I can put that link in there too. They fit the wooden cards perfectly. This is a smaller refrigerator shelf. I don't like it as much. It fits these guys, the little, stars, which I find much harder to wind. It takes me much longer, and because I have so much thread. I think if I didn't have a lot of thread, I'd like these. They're pretty and they're nice. I'm going to try to find the link for Nicole Davies' son. He actually has stars like this that he's made in. They're a little bit thicker than this, and they're in a kind of plastic. I think he does them with the 3D printer, and there's a box that he designed. So you literally have these all kind of lined up, and you just pull the thread. You don't even have to take it out of the box, and you pull the thread, and it all just kind of comes off. And that seems like a pretty cool system. Again, if I didn't have a ton of threads, I would totally, I think, use that kind of system. But because I have obviously so much thread, I just need whatever way I can do this the quickest. And for me, the quickest is these big guys. As I said, House of Embroidery, there's the yardage is smaller, and I use these guys. They're super cheap and they're easy. This also comes with a little hand crank thing, which again I've put somewhere, but I don't know where. And I've used that a couple times, but like I said, never have to look for my knees. They're always there. Okay. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button. That always helps me out with the YouTube algorithms. And if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Leave me comments. I love hearing from you. And until next time, let's keep stitching together.